And
Well,
so go ahead.
yeah, easier said than done though, especially if it's like, if it's not part of a conversation. Like if you're sitting there, like it's not even on our intake, Kevin.
Mhm.
Like I
Right.
have to sit there and be like, what's your preferred pronoun?
Hmm.
Because it's not even like a thing that is regularly asked in sessions.
Yeah.
Um, how do we get it more a part of conversation? Like tell me. Like I'd love to know, how do
Hmm.
we talk about it and not have people squirming in their seats or feel like, yeah, I don't know. Do you guys feel like it's just like people don't know enough about it? Or do you guys feel
Yeah.
like it's just like still really uncomfortable to bring up sexuality? What does
Yeah.
it feel like?
Yeah. Sex in general is still a taboo subject. People don't want to talk about it. It just like it's off limits. And that's just part of, that's part of humanity. That's what happens. And so
Yeah,
to
it's
even talk
great.
about sexuality, it's just like, I mean, you go so me personally being great raised by grandparents, this is a subject that we would never broach. We would never have the conversation
No
about.
birds and bees.
Oh, look, if my granddad had 14 kids, so he couldn't tell me. He just kind of showed me, hey, it's 14 kids. What else
Mhm.
to say, right?
Mhm.
But no, seriousness though, is that me dealing with that population, I feel more comfortable than I did I would say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, even having the conversation. Uh
Mhm.
it, it it for me now, it's just so much respect for them. Not to say that I subscribe to that way of life, but again, I respect them for even living in that truth. And so
Mhm.
for them to be able to live in that truth, that it takes a lot.
Yeah.
Just like you were saying, it took you to 28 to come out and say, hey, this is what I am. But I think it's a braveness. It's just it's a big deal to me to see someone come out like that.
Do you like, if we have to describe it as brave, then we also have to acknowledge that like it's not safe, right?
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
like that's something that, for especially like when we look at statistics, right? Like who gets murdered the most? Oh, it's, Black trans people,
Hmm.
like 100%. So how do we even have that discussion too? Like, yeah, I love the fact people are living with their truth. How do we also keep them safe? And not that I ever felt unsafe, but there's moments in college where, and I guess that was like part of me not knowing things too, and my own awareness, because I had friends who were lesbian and identified as Black, and they were like, yeah, this is my truth. And it didn't feel taboo to me. It didn't feel wrong.
Hmm.
Um, and that's where, even like growing up in Chicago area, like there's certain just parts where it doesn't feel like it's outside of the norm
Hmm.
until you go outside of those safe areas and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot, like this sucks.
Yeah.
So I mean, if your experiences are like, for the most part safe, I never felt unsafe with like my own parents. I like, me coming out of them was just more like, hey, that vision of the wedding that you thought was happening maybe won't look like that. Like just prepare yourselves. Or if I invite Sarah or Sam,
Uh-huh.
to the barbecue, how do we have that discussion?
Is your
Um,
Wow.
is your dating life easier that you are bi? So like on dating apps in general, does it make it easier for you to date out here? Because
No,
it's a
because I'm in the suburbs. It's not easy at all. Like it's not great. Yes and no. I feel like what happens is, um, especially on the field, like on what I'm on for dating apps, I'm not like, it's very geared toward LGBTQ, but also geared toward the poly lifestyle. So you're on there and there's like couples looking for a third, or there are people who are just like wanting casual hangs. We call them commons. And it's like when you have those different levels, you have to really know what you're looking for, because otherwise you can get kind of lost in it. So I wouldn't really
So
say easier.
I'm glad you brought that up too, because you've said poly more than 3 times already, and I want you for no, you're good. I want you for the audience to describe what that is, and then also some of the levels of LGBTQ community,
Yeah, no,
Be-
okay.
because they may not know. That's all I'm saying.
No, that's fair. Poly is non-monogamy. So monogamy is one-on-one. So it's like you and your partner, and poly can be a variety of different types of relationships that you have. Think about it like, how many best friends do you have, Jalel?
How many best friends? I say
Like one,
three
two,
or four,
oh,
maybe
three.
like 3 or 4.
Okay, yeah, you're
Like close,
sad.
like close people. Yeah, I would say about 3
Three, and then like other friends outside of that, right?
associates. Yeah,
Yeah.
associates.
Yeah, they're like my level 2 friends.
Yeah.
That's kind of how poly works sometimes. It's like where you have different levels of relationships. Everything is consensual. Everybody knows everybody that's like within your polycule, like your little family. I am also an anarchist when it comes to poly, so I don't believe that there's hierarchy. But a lot of poly people believe in hierarchies. Like you have you and your one partner, and then you all have like a secondary couple, maybe even a tertiary level.
Yeah.
I believe everybody's kind of equal. But then LGBTQ, you can have any one of a sexual identity identifier, like lesbian, gay, pan. Pan is like anything and everything. And like there's so many in betweens, right? Bisexual, all those things. And you can still be poly with them. Monogamy and poly are just the difference between the types of relationships that you're having.
Gotcha.
Makes sense?
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. So where does that interracial piece come in at? Tell me where you are with that. I know we brought that up.
Well, I think part of my frustration with moving back to Chicago for grad school was noticing that it was not okay for Black men to be bi. Like that was almost seen as worse than just being outright gay. And I really struggled with that because I really didn't understand like what the difference was. But then I like brought back to an undergrad where I was dating someone who's BIPOC, and I got asked, was like, would you ever consider dating somebody that was like Black? And I was like, well, I mean, I am, but why was I being asked that question? And then I was like, are other people getting asked this question? And then if she's Black, does that mean that like that I can't say yes to a guy too? Like, I don't know, I felt like there's just so many questions I was getting asked where I was like, I didn't realize that people were asking these questions. Like, was I not allowed to? So then when I went to Chicago, I was like, am I allowed to ask anybody? Like, hey, would you ever date me because I'm white? Or are you going to date me because you fetishize whiteness? I don't fucking know. So it's just like also that question of, is that a question that we can ask each other? Or is that still seen with like a stigma? Like if I ask you that, then it becomes like a racial thing. Wow. And does that make sense?
Yeah, I just didn't know that it was so complex. And so, for you to say that and break it down like that, I definitely, it does, now that you're saying that, it makes sense why you feel the way you feel. And, again, it sounds so complex because at me as a heterosexual, if I were out dating again, it wouldn't be that complicated, And like earlier, Jaleel was like, is it easier being, bi or poly or whatever? And it seems to me it's easier to be heterosexual because it's not so complex.
I mean, maybe, but if you come down to racial though, like you guys not get asked those questions? I'm just wondering, like, that was one of my questions. Like, is that a piece of conversation that like bros have together, that like, friends have together? Is that a conversation? Like, hey, would you ever date, someone who's Chinese? Or would you ever date somebody who's like, I don't know, Cuban? Like, is that, I just didn't know if that was like a normalized thing. Am I the outlier with that?
No, it's definitely a conversation that people have.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's a conversation, but it's more so like I see it more on social media, especially when you say that like Black men can't be bisexual. I see that conversation happening a lot, where it's like a man or a Black man, you can't be bi, you either like one or the other.
Yeah.
And I see that a lot. I wonder, why is that? What's the like, I guess the stigma that I also see too is that the HIV and the AIDS thing, or men with their infidelity. It's like, I already got to fight against women. Now I have to fight against men and women.
Are you saying like in a relationship, it's just like assumed that a man's going to be like have an affair or something like that?
Well, that's the stuff that I see a lot on
Mhm.
social media when they talk about men being bi. They be like, oh, men have a bad history with cheating and infidelity. So it's like, okay, I got to worry about him looking at women. Now I got to worry about him looking at men and women. Or if I accept him from being bi,
Mm.
when he hang out with his male friends, do I have to worry about him sleeping with his guy friends or hanging out with other gay men? Like, what are they doing behind my back? Just not trusting that person.
Well, I feel like that's a deeper issue then. Because like if you don't trust your person, then like that's a you not trusting your person, regardless of like who they're around. Like I don't care who you are. If you see Natalie Portman walking down the road, you're gonna be like, that's fucking hot. So if you are having a trust issue, doesn't matter what the population is that they like.
You're right.